So I'm very glad that I have the opportunity to talk to you today. And I thought, given that we have such a great project, the GOAL project, and so many experts and specialists coming here, I thought I'd offer you some provocations, some things that I looked into in my recent research. So I hope that you find this interesting and that it gives you a lot of food for thought when I talk about democracy's twilight. Artificial intelligence, openness, and design, and the structure of my talk basically will be 5 steps with 3 provocations in the middle. So back to the future, short introduction. Then I'm going to talk about the openness of AI. I'm going to make one argument about accountability and the law, about action, and then I'll summarize. So back to the future, what do I mean by that? Just to give you some of my basic assumptions from one thread of the reflection of technologies I'm really interested in, which is science and technology studies. And this understanding and this approach that innovation and development of technology is contingent. So while it has normative force, while it really impacts us, there is a lot of room for choice. And actually, by engaging with technology, we are shaping these developments. So it's not only the technology shaping us, but also we shape this technology. I refer to the exchange of Sandra Wachte and Joanna, which I think made this point very clear. And together with that, processes of transformation do not follow a automated logic, but they're open. And my movie reference here is Back to the Future, and not because of the movie itself, but the way it handled technology and also the way it implanted the ideas of certain technologies into us. It's really interesting, a film from 1985 projecting the future in 2015. So when you watch it, you really have a sense of how they, in a way, painted a futurist picture almost of today or of seven years ago. And I find this very interesting. For example, the hoverboards. Yeah, a lot of startups try to build them just because they saw them there. But there is also a lot of influence on the design, for example, of flat screens, which were painted there, but didn't exist at the time. Even the technologies didn't really exist at the time. So Back to the Future, we are continuously shaping technology, and this has a big impact on democracy. And in a way, it's interesting to think about this from a collective and individual self-determination point of view. And you will see what I mean by that, especially when I talk about openness. So my first point, and this is a really important point to me, it's so great to see that artificial intelligence as a field of research is quite open. The term AI is not limited to machine learning, but you could frame it as a much bigger research question in computer sciences. It's not one technology, but a set of technologies, and it's open regarding the technologies and resources and the purposes. There is even further aspects of the openness. Let me provide you with a proof of what I present you today in the chat. So if you want to look it up, the main arguments, you'll find it in the chat. But let's look a little bit at openness. So technologies and resources, it's really important for us to think of AI in a continuum that started with general ideas like good old-fashioned AI that should be based on common sense, to the expert systems in the 90s that were based on expert knowledge, and now artificial neural networks, deep learning that is very data intensive based on data. But it's also good to have the hypothesis that this will not be the end of the development of AI, and several approaches are on the horizon, like evolutionary AI. And for evolutionary AI, personal data might be much less relevant, so it could rely much more on computation. So the technologies and the resources we use for AI are open in the sense that there is a lot of choice. And I argue, and I think Sandra has proven this point already, as a general purpose technology, we can use AI for very different purposes. The purposes are open. I can use it for discrimination. I can, if I train on biased data sets and employ these algorithms, but I can also use it to visualize, to make known, or to a certain extent to remedy discriminations, especially in the architectures Joanna described. And the same is true for other values as well. So take, for example, privacy. I'll not go into detail, but the social credit system has shown which big threats come from AI for privacy, and there's many more examples, but this has been a very, very obvious one. But on the other hand, it's really interesting to see how AI also works as privacy enhancing technology. And I was, in the preparation of this talk, really astonished that you find a lot of tools actually in the app stores of your mobile phone that help you to enforce privacy, like this anonymization tool. There's a lot of anonymization tools, photo anonymization, different things to enforce privacy. And the general point behind this is that this gives us the sense that we can use this technology for many different purposes. It's actually open. So in building certain technologies, of course, we have, for example, to use personal data, but even that could potentially be remedied if I use other architectures. So to appreciate the openness, I try to think about what could this mean for the law. I like that we came to this regulatory discussion. And what struck me is that in law and ethics, we often try to in a way translate principles. So we have this principle in ethics and law and as a social norm, and then we try to specify it so that engineers can understand it. And what I propose to you now is to appreciate the openness in a different way by creating a meso-principle. So reinforcing this openness normatively by creating a meso-principle. Oops, sorry. That in a way allows for systems to be adapted in different ways. And here I want to be sensitive to the very different and context-dependent problems that AI can actually have, and want to reinforce the fact that we also have to see these systems in the whole life cycle. So it's not enough to just have compliance at the start, but really to see how they pan out throughout their life cycle. So this is my first provocation, or my first idea that I would like to discuss for you. Could there be a principle of designability? So not taking something that is already existing in law, but trying to create something between law, ethics, technology that actually translates several values at the same time. So it's a meso-principle, it's enforcing democracy and self-determination. And my idea is that it has two limbs. The first is that it has to, the choices have to be intelligible. So actually, I have to know about the design choices, and I have to know about their effects. And I can describe this like patterns. So if I go this way, then this will happen. And if I go that way, then that will happen. Yeah. So it has to be intelligible to a certain extent. And the other point that is really important to me, changeable. Yeah. It's not either or, but we might have a variety of choices, either in the system itself or in other systems that could be in a way trained as an alternative. And this would be realizing this principle of designability to a full extent. So just one discourse I find very interesting, and that ties into the first presentation as well, are these school placement algorithms. And it's really interesting that there have been several cases, some of which could be actually remedied. So some could be fixed, some actually provided for ways which Joanna mentioned. So an ex post rule-based correction to factor certain things differently in, for example, allocating students or drawing up school districts. And there is also design alternatives. So people thinking, I want to have a different system, and I actually provide the alternative. And I think that's a great area to study designability and to study the way in which we can keep our choices open while using AI, and to reinforce this great openness of AI normatively. So that's my first provocation. Second provocation, accountability. And I'm very thankful for the words of the president of the University of Münster, highlighting the problem that accountability is a big question. It stems for me from the openness, but also from the increasing autonomy of these systems, that they can handle problems more independently. So how do we account for that? And again, I'm tying into the discussion before. We could try to make systems more responsible, even to elevate them in their legal status. I've provided you here with AI systems that want to embody people. I know that many people in the audience are critical of that, including myself, but also the idea of an e-personality. And as was mentioned before, I want to go exactly in the other direction. So I think we need to do exactly the opposite. And this means to look at what humans are doing. And for that, I'm using a theory of science and technology studies, actor network theory, because actor network theory very early on stressed the agency of technology. It says, well, we have to appreciate artifacts as actors and their collaboration with humans. So they're not only tools in the sense of Karl Jaspers, but they have their own agency. So a person holding a gun is something different than a person without a gun. Yeah. So they stress the agency, and one could think that this whole discourse about AI in a way is actor network theory brought to life. But I say no, the interesting thing about actor network theory is that it highlighted hidden agency. It highlighted hidden agency when technology was embedded in society. And I think exactly that's what we have to do. And we have to highlight the agency of human beings. Yeah, it was mentioned before, how do these processes of training work? How is the organization structured? So to know about these things. So I look at the reverse ANT constellations, and I say humans are still actors in this. And we have to take an ex ante perspective. That's also my take on the regulation. Take this ex ante perspective and try to impact that. So how do we do this? Not by crying out loud that there is an algocracy coming, but to look more closely on what happens. And one way for me to translate this into the legal discussion would be, for example, to reinterpret a very important rule about automated decision making, which is Article 22 GDPR. So I published this recently in the Heidelberg Journal of International Law. And I said, before we, there were many good discussions, very helpful discussions about how to interpret this this rule, but they were always focusing on specific rights as if this was a tick box approach, that I have to look into transparency or a right to humane decision or things like that. And I said, look at the parallel structure of 22 and Article 25 and appreciate the fact that we can actually use this as a human rights by design norm. As a human rights by design norm that forces us to engage with human rights impacts and make human rights compliance part of the development process. As Article 25 through an indirect way, but make it part of the development process. And if you think about Article 22 like that, it completely changes the way it's applied, because you have to engage in design choices. You have to look into the design, and the responsibility of human actors arises, because then it's not the machines, but it's the human people choosing the training data and so on and so forth, making the design choices. Yeah? So this could be a way to also reconceptualize what we already have in order to make impacts on the design and strengthen the accountability that is hidden. And that's human accountability for me. So that's my second provocation, my second thought. reinterpret Article 22, strengthen accountability. And now my third provocation, let's see at the time. No, I'm really good. I have time to explain this in depth. So the question is, what does it mean to engage in technology design? And I want to make three arguments here. So for an increased proactiveness, building on Sandra Wachter's presentation, but maybe adding a little bit to that even. So going a little bit beyond that, to appreciate the socio-technical design and to take active approaches. So you will hopefully glean in a minute what I mean by that. But let me start with proactiveness. And you can really see in the way that societal concerns have been flagged for technology development has evolved substantially since the 70s. So in the 70s, it was all about technology impact assessments.